Hello and welcome to this week's This is MediaCity. I'm Stephen Chapman and today I am joined by Cameron Roach, who's the boss of Rope Ladder Fiction. That's the company behind Waterloo Road, and they've just moved into a massive studio complex just down the road. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about his career, which includes some massive hits, not least Footballers' Wives and Life on Mars. Cameron, thank you very much for coming to This is MediaCity. Founder, exec producer, Rope Ladder Fiction. It's a busy time for you as well at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's a good time. We've just kind of arrived at our kind of new studios just over the water. So no, it's a good time. Yeah.
It's an amazing building studios that you're going to. So we're going to go into that in a bit of depth. We always start our podcast with an icebreaker.
Okay.
To find a little bit more about you. So hopefully we'll put you on the spot a bit here.
The best piece of advice. Oh goodness, that's a hard one.
Well, for someone who works with young people and gets them into an industry as well, this is something I imagine you're asked a lot, is it?
Yeah. No, that's a good way into it. I think in terms of people breaking into the industry, the best piece of advice I always give is about enthusiasm, because it doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is. I think on a daily basis we meet a lot of new entrants into the industry, and I think the thing that you always remember is enthusiasm. Yeah.
The one thing I tell the undergrads and grads that work with us here is we can almost teach you anything on the production set, but we can't teach you who you are.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time sitting in rooms and overnights and stuff with people, and that personality is so important.
It really is, yeah.
I'm going to give you one more.
Okay, I'm always going for the middle. Is that fine?
I should have.
Importance of working in the north. Well, I think...
How long have you been working up in the north?
Well, on and off over a number of years. So the first show I made in the north was Life on Mars. And I think that was the show where I fell in love with Manchester. And it's a place where I'm now settled with my family, got 3 children. And it's just a brilliant place to be. So, the importance of working in the north. Well, I just think... as in terms of the TV media landscape, it's so important that the nation reflects itself back on itself. Do you know what I mean? So I think we need, if you look at the kind of pedigree of something like Granada, whenever there's a strong kind of northern program making base, the whole industry is stronger. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's something about that, I think, really.
Sometimes I do my running order in advance and actually do a little bit of work and try and work out what, but all the time I end up listening to your answers, and I kind of have to start with Life on Mars, don't I?
do start with Life on Mars, yeah.
Because your program background, you've worked on some crackers over the years, haven't you? Yeah. How did it all begin?
How did it all begin in terms of my career?
Because as I say, I'm going back to this was what I was coming to at the end. Yeah. But you started like ITV2 and places like that, didn't you?
Yes. So do you want me to go right back?
I want to know, because you didn't study media at university or anything like that, did you?
So I studied international relations and I studied in Aberdeen. And at that point in my career, I thought I wanted to work on Newsnight. Do you know what I mean? That was my kind of way in, really. And I had done pockets of work experience at Granada when it was on Key Street. And I'd worked, in my work experience there, I worked in the newsroom, and I also worked on some of the Sky B shows, which is Granada Sky Broadcasting.
That was MUTV in the early days and things, wasn't it?
So
Richard Hammond, I think,
was early career. It was that kind of era. And I think that early work experience, it just kind of lit a flame inside me of like, I wanted to be in this environment. Do you know what I mean? So I graduated. I couldn't get a job in the traditional sense. So I actually got a job in the call centre for Sky in Livingston. And so my first job for 9 months was on the customer cancellation line for Sky.
Oh dear. Okay.
So that's how I kind of... And I think I quite enjoyed it because I was in a TV environment. And at the time then, and they still do this in the Sky call centres, you sit in front of a bank of TV screens with all the different channels in front of you. And being the kind of geek that I was, I just literally had this kind of knowledge of observing all the different TV channels and had a kind of encyclopedic knowledge of all the different TV shows. Anyway, a job came up at Sky in London. I think at the time it was G2, the Guardian media section, had these pages and pages of jobs, and a job came up in London, and it was something called commercial traffic, which probably doesn't exist anymore. But basically what it was is getting the physical adverts from ad agencies over a week, uploading them into the transmission kind of system and seeing them play out to transmission. So it was a kind of, it was a proper kind of admin role, but I was at the heart of the kind of transmission interface at Osterley and Sky. And so it was an amazing kind of introduction to the kind of world of television, really.
Apart from the fact that you were kind of getting all these dramas thrown at you in sport from Sky, and so kind of plugged into the Sky central hub almost. How do you take it from that to where you next went then? Because this was admin to
So
production.
basically that job of commercial traffic, there was at the time a kind of a line job of program traffic, and that was the step up. So then ITV were advertising for, they wanted to go into digital channels, so they wanted to set up digital channels. So they'd advertised for people to work on ITV2. And it didn't really have massive backing from the main network at the time. And so ultimately there were 9 of us, 9 kind of mid-20s, running a channel, basically. And we didn't have a huge budget, but we were putting together schedules that were off the back of existing programming on ITV. So, for example, I programmed Banged Up on 2, and it was a whole series of different prison dramas. So there was a bit of the first series of Bad Girls, there was Deirdre Rashid in prison from Corrie, and we basically built schedules around that. And anyway, that led me to connecting with people in the drama landscape. And I applied for a researcher job on Bad Girls Series 2, and that was my big break into drama. And I think that perfectly married my kind of interest in kind of research and authenticity on screen, and also the enjoyment of drama. I've always enjoyed drama, and I was in the University Drama Society and things like that, so I've always had a love of those things. So it kind of all made sense for me at that time. And then I was working on Bad Girls at the early stage of Shed Productions. Shed Productions was formed for lots of people that had worked on Coronation Street together back in the day. And so I was in there at a very early stage and was really lucky to learn from Eileen Gallagher, Anne McManus, Maureen Chadwick, Brian Park, and not only in terms of storylining and creation of story, but in terms of casting and the edit as well. So it was a real amazing kind of learning curve at that time, really.
Were you kind of taking bits from everyone? Did you have like an idea of what you wanted to do then, apart from work drama?
At that point I just really loved script editing and wanted to be a script editor, and so that was where my career path then took me. So I worked on Bad Girls as a script editor, and then I was lucky enough to be part of TV25 and go to the TV festival, and through that I won a role at BBC, and then I got a job on Casualty. So I worked on Casualty for a number of years as script editor and then series editor. So series editor is someone who then manages the story across the entire series. And that was down in Bristol. So that was a good place to be too.
And that's a heck of a place to learn, I imagine, on Casualty.
Yeah, Casualty it's fast moving, and you're essentially publishing a script a week. So it's a lot of drama.
And when did Life on Mars come about?
So to fast track a bit, so from Casualty I produced Bad Girls. I produced Bad Girls season 6, and then I went on to produce Footballers' Wives,
which was a massive show.
Which was a massive show, and probably the toughest producing job I've ever had or ever will have.
Why is that?
It was just the scale of the show, not only in terms of what we were trying to portray on screen, which was uber well for not much money, but also at the time we were literally in the tabloids every day. So our unit base was tracked by Paps all the time, And the hours were huge because all the costume makeup calls were kind of at 5, 6 in the morning, and you were shooting. And also you didn't have a solid production base. You were constantly moving. So it was a really tough job, but one that I loved, and I made a huge number of kind of lifelong friends on it. And it was a really great show to be part of. And then out of that, I'd worked with a director called S.J. Clarkson, and we'd worked together actually on Casualty as well as Footballers' Wives. And she'd directed on the first season of Life on Mars and had recommended me to Jane Featherstone and Claire Parker at Kudos, which is how I got the job on season 2 of Life on Mars.
And what was that like? Because that was another one which was a massive, massive show.
Yeah. And so I'd seen season 1 before it actually aired. And I can still remember this shows how long ago it was. I was putting the video into my video recorder at home and watching the first episode and just being genuinely blown away. And the thought that I could be part of this show was just huge. And then when I got the job, and as I got the job, the first season was coming out and creating the waves that we all now know about it. But it was an amazing show to be involved in, yeah.
And I might be skipping some bits here, but
yeah, it's a long time, so do skip a bit.
But bearing in mind that you started out sitting there in front of all these Sky channels, you ended up, was it head of drama?
Head of drama at Sky, yeah.
That must have been a weird
it was
thing.
But I really liked that, because I think what it spoke to is, I think too often in the industry we create these almost false layers and levels of hierarchy. And actually, I remember when I was working in the call centre, some heads of marketing flew up from London to kind of talk to us about that. And there was a level of kind of almost they were patronising to those people working in the call centre, and it always stuck with me, because I was like, when I'm at your level, I will always remember what it feels like to be sitting in the trenches. And so actually, when I was latterly working at Sky, I'd make a point of working 2 or 3 days a week out of the call centre in Stockport, because I felt closer to the customer base and closer to understanding what customers were wanting to enjoy on the channels. And that was a really, really nice kind of full circle moment for me, actually.
I suppose you appreciate your role more when you know where you've come from.
Yeah.
And tell us about some of the shows that you commissioned and worked on at Sky, because there are some biggies there. Was Chernobyl one of yours?
Yes, well, I kind of inherited that because I was working closely with Anne Mensah, and at the time that Chernobyl was in post-production, and got the job at Netflix UK. So that's when I stepped up into that role. But no, there were a number of shows that worked across that I'm really proud of. Things like The Five, which was the first Harlan Coben project.
He's written some stuff recently, hasn't he? He seems to be always there.
Yeah.
And very close association with Manchester, as we know.
Exactly.
With,
because Nicola encouraged
Street,
that partnership. So that was exciting. And then titles like Britannia and Riviera, they were big scale dramas. But I think what's important is that was a key kind of driver to me to initiate the rope ladder model. And what I mean by that is that when I was working alongside Anne Mensah at Sky, we could understand that there was this explosion of high-end drama, so the kind of 3, 4, 5 million an hour drama, which on the one hand is hugely exciting. But when you want to encourage and enable a next generation of creative and of talent, no one is going to take risk on new talent at that level. So what we understood is that you needed this mixed ecology of program making, and we were stepping into a kind of Sky Studios model that was pushing for lower cost, higher volume drama. But just as we were doing that, takeover happened and left to Netflix, and so what we were just starting to put in place couldn't actually be kind of backed to the level that we wanted to do it. And I think my kind of focus was increasingly kind of Manchester and the Northwest, and my children were at a certain age, so I was thinking this is the moment for me to kind of put my kind of roots down and go, right, I'm backing rope ladder and this philosophy for now. And so that's when, and it was just around the pandemic that I made this decision. But I was like, no, I'm going to initiate something called Rope Ladder Fiction at that time. Do you know what I mean?
Tell me about the philosophy then behind Rope Ladders. You kind of touched on it there.
So
you set it up in
2021, I think. So it's about 4 or 5 years old now. But why we called it kind of Rope Ladder Fiction is that I think, rather than Rope Ladder Productions, is that I was interested in the whole ladder. So I was thinking of, because it is a kind of wobbly ladder that we all have to climb, and particularly if you're a creative, you sometimes you have huge successes, but then you have to deal with huge rejection, and so it's people kind of almost understanding that that's the career ladder. It's not some perfect thing that everyone glides up. It is a wobbly climb, and so I wanted to kind of talk to that, but also I believe that fiction and storytelling starts at a really young age when you're in school, and I think that I am interested in outreach work. So to kind of briefly summarize, we think of Rope Ladder Fiction as having 4 rungs. So rung 1 is where we do lots of outreach work. So this month being Creative Careers Month, we're working lots of schools and colleges and talking about storytelling and the power of storytelling and encouraging people to write. So in kind of a safe space way, you don't have to show someone you're writing, you just have to know that you have that capacity. Yeah. Rung 2 is what we describe as a kind of almost our brave space, so where we invest in short films, we ask people to be their bravest selves in terms of putting pen to paper. We've actually published a book with Flapjack Press, just of short stories from first-time writers to just encourage that kind of writing. And then rung 3 is, I suppose, where it is very much more at that kind of commercial end of things. Rung 3 is a kind of production, I would say, like Waterloo Road that we're now making for the BBC. And then rung 4 is the ambition is to have those bigger co-production type shows. So what I'm trying to evolve is a model that you can kind of picture yourself any place on that ladder, but also know that you're part of a bigger kind of ecosystem. And actually, the idea is that rungs 3 and 4 can provide kind of outreach opportunities and networking opportunities with people at rungs 1 and 2. And that should be the philosophy really behind it.
And I suppose in a way you're putting your money where your mouth is. I think you're funding 2 short films a year. One of them, I wrote it down, Surprise Baby,
yes,
is, I think, was done by someone who was on a runner trainee scheme at Waterloo Road. Is that
exactly right? Exactly right. So Zayn, who's a brilliant creative, was a runner and came through the Screen Manchester programme. And I think had shared their script with Angela Griffin, and she was like, oh, we'll share it with Cameron. And so that's how that conversation began. And so, it's just trying to encourage that spirit, because I think that actually just even going back to how Granada worked back in the day, you think, how was Caroline Aherne able to kind of make her name and really establish that? And that's because she was a secretary at Granada and sharing her script with people, and people understood she was funny, and that was encouraged and enabled within that environment. Do you know what I mean? And I think through COVID, through the way that the industry is now structured, I think we're all much more siloed. So we don't have that opportunity for exchange of ideas and interaction that I think is so important, particularly in the creative space.
And how difficult is that now? Not just since COVID, but obviously financially things are tough out there.
Yeah.
Whether you're BBC, whether you're a commercial broadcaster looking at advertising and everything else.
Yeah.
From someone who is making drama, which even the low-end dramas are kind of expensive.
Yeah.
Is that getting more and more difficult if you're a young person trying to climb up to rungs 1, 2 or 3?
I think it's different. I think actually in a strange way, if I remind myself of where I was sat in that call centre and furiously looking through a Guardian newspaper to find my opportunity, now I'm so excited by the opportunity of people self-publishing, getting together with friends, making podcasts, making short films, and being able to kind of oxygenate the creative process. But I'm also aware that that does sit outside the kind of formality of traditional broadcaster. And I think the next kind of 5 years is going to be so interesting in terms of how the traditional broadcasters can absorb that talent and work with that talent. And I think certainly for an organisation like the BBC, I think it's going to be critical for its kind of next iteration and its survival kind of beyond charter renewal. So I'm interested, that feels like that needs to be quite an active conversation for us all to be having, really.
It is the excitement that you can create whatever you want now, but almost you need to have that people like yourselves to kind of give you the foundations, the grammar to kind of reversion it so that it can get beyond YouTube.
I think that's right, because I think one of the missing conversations to that point is around the discipline of craft and crafting it. And whether it's a podcast or a radio show or a TV show, there is a lot of craft that goes into it that you learn through working with others, actually, and working with people who are hugely experienced in their field that can add value to what you know. Do you know what I mean?
Just to give, if younger people or even older people think about career change and watching this, do you watch it when someone says, I've got a CV, but I've also got a YouTube channel, I've got Instagram? Do you click?
Yeah, no, I do. And it's hard because I think it's also saying to people, things won't shift overnight. Building a career in this sector, it's approaching it like a marathon. And actually there is a close analogy with sports that you have to kind of train and be quite disciplined about your training. And what I mean by that, if you're writing, if you're creating content, you've got to keep doing that, even if you're not necessarily paid full time for that. Do you know what I mean? Do balance it with a job in a call centre or in a pizza restaurant. It's okay to be doing that. But I think sometimes people feel apologetic about stating that. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, I've completely forgotten what the question was now.
That's all right. Let's use that as a good way to kind of segue into somewhere else, because one thing that has been a massive part of your life for a long time now is Waterloo Road, because you were an executive producer in iteration 1, then there was a break, and now it's back again, and it's bigger than ever.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
So I suppose it's been an amazing experience, because I think that I would connect it with my relationship with Shed. So season 1 in 2006 was being developed when I was producing Footballers' Wives.
Oh, it's that far back?
So it was all within the same production company, the production label. So I was watching with interest as the first season was being shot in Rochdale as I was producing Footballers' Wives. Now, my career went off in different directions, and I produced shows like Life on Mars and Silk. And I was invited back to exec produce, I think it was series 7? Anyway, it was that.
I should have it on my notes here. I probably have somewhere.
It's around that time. So, and I think what I valued about the show, and always have done, is that it came from Anne McManus's lived experience of being a teacher in quite a challenged secondary school in Glasgow, and her belief that education is for everyone. And it's quite, all those Shed shows, Bad Girls, Footballers' Wives, Waterloo Road, they are kind of quite gently social justice campaigning shows, but they are hugely entertaining shows. And I think that's the kind of TV that I love and enjoy and want to make, actually, that you are kind of, there is a social justice underbelly to them all that that feels important, but it's inherently entertaining. And I think it's that spirit that I really admire. And I also, I just believe in the power of education in that way. So I was then in the fortuitous position that as I was setting up Rope Ladder Fiction, because of COVID, the viewing figures on iPlayer of those original series has really leapt.
Because
massively.
what happened was, just to give a bit of background, and I think I've got the right background, but it started out in Rochdale.
Yes.
Then it moved up to Scotland, which is where Anne McManus came from, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Things happened. BBC, I think, wanted to set something along the lines that they were looking at developing new dramas. So Waterloo Road stopped.
Yeah.
And that was the end.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and presumably either parents were missing sending their kids to school and just wanted to remember what it was like. Kids may have been missing school, it seems unlikely, but you never know. Or there was so much stuff they needed to binge watch, and Waterloo Road had 11 or 10 or 11 series right there, happily on iPlayer, and suddenly the figures went whoosh.
Yes.
And you started getting a call again, I imagine.
Exactly that. I mean, the numbers were huge. I mean, in certain demographics, it was outperforming Strictly Come Dancing and Doctor Who. I mean, and I do think there were lots of young people that actually were getting a bit of a hit from the social that they were missing in school through Waterloo Road. So it was a really interesting time. So yeah, the then head of drama, Piers, and Charlotte Moore invited me to kind of pitch a reboot, which I did.
Was there any thought at that stage that it would go back in Scotland, or was it always going to be
No, well, I think initially when Piers called me, I was like, no, you shouldn't go back. You should never go back. You should always look forward. But then he was like, no, have a think about it. And I did think about it. And I thought, no, if I get this right, this goes to the heart of what Rope Ladder's about. And so, of course, I was Manchester-based. And in my heart of hearts, I believe it's a Greater Manchester show. And what I mean by that is I think that it is a little bit leery, it's a little bit in your face, a bit chippy, but ultimately it's a big warm hug of a show. And I think that's the Mancunian spirit. I really think. And I think the character of Dante through Adam Thomas or Kim Campbell through Angela, they really have that warmth and energy, the northern warmth and energy that is Waterloo Road, that I think that was the kind of bedrock that I knew I had to build the show back on, really. So there was never really a question of it going back to Scotland, really.
And it's gone on and still going on, and it's doing really good figures, and you've got big actors coming in, and you've got a new place to film it.
Yes,
well, we better talk about it. It's a Rope Ladder fiction co-production with Wall to Wall as well, isn't it? Which is owned by Warner.
Yeah. So the underlying rights for Waterloo Road are held by Warner because they Shed Media, which was the original production company, Shed Productions became Shed Media, which was an amalgamation of a number of production companies, got bought by Warner Brothers. There was a buyout. So they hold the underlying rights. So I work closely with Leanne Klein, who's head of Wall to Wall, and basically we formed a partnership. So I could essentially spearhead the show editorially. Meanwhile, I've got the backing of a very established production label in terms of business affairs and the legal sides.
The boring stuff.
I'm not going to say that, but some might. But basically, so I'm in a really fortunate position that I've got the breadth and range to kind of lead it editorially, but I've got that stability of working with a very established label. So it's the best of both worlds, and it means that I'm able to now kind of run a development slate alongside it and develop other projects. So it's a great position to be in.
And for Waterloo Road, now at the time of writing on Prolific North, so this may have changed since then, Manchester's biggest commercial real estate deal of the year it was at the time.
I heard that.
48,500 square foot next to Man United. Mm-hmm. Former Misguided HQ, isn't it?
It is the Misguided HQ, yeah.
That must, when you open the doors to that must be like, oh my God, here we are.
Well, I think, it did feel quite daunting because I think we'd used up until that point council sites, do you know what I mean? So we'd worked in ex-schools or colleges. We were on the Nichols campus for a while. And so this is the first time we were entering a commercial agreement.
So are these going to be interiors and stuff shot in the new place? Is it? Or you're not building a school in there, are you?
No. So we have basically fictionally the school is not changing. So to the viewers, when the school moved sites in series 14, that's the Jason Manford series, we are still fictionally in the same building. So what we've done is we've replicated a lot of the existing sets in the Misguided building. And
I think you can call it yours now.
I think we can, the Waterloo Road building. But fortuitously, the front and the architecture of the building is very similar to the Nichols campus. So on screen, hopefully it will seamlessly look like the same school. Well, I think it does. There's
it may be fiction that I'm repeating, but I think the Coronation Street set over on the other side of the water,
Yeah.
the big massive brick wall there is because of the way camera angles were at Granada Television.
Oh, okay.
So they've had to just build an enormous red brick wall just to
that's
match
interesting.
what
Yeah.
it used to be in the old days at Key Street. This is what I've been told, so if that might be Ermid myth.
No, it makes sense.
But the other advantage of having a big old studio, an on-running show like this, is that you can do a bit of your 1 and 2 rungs
Exactly.
as part of the show, because you're working with Warner Brothers on director training and bringing all these people into Waterloo Road and kind of helping them out. That must be kind of a big thing for you, because I know
No, it is.
Yeah.
It is, and I think it is. It comes back to that point that I believe that a lot of high-end drama can't kind of give opportunity to emerging talent in the same way. So we work with Screen Manchester, and we run a training program across lots of craft disciplines, from kind of props through costume, makeup, and we do similar schemes, as you say, directors schemes with Warner Brothers Discovery, and we've had a number of directors come through that way. And then we work with BBC Writers' Room as well, with emerging writing talent, and we've had newer writers work on the show, and we've run shadow programs with writers as well. And this month, with the Creative Careers Month happening, we're working with a number of local schools and colleges to run either storytelling workshops, or a number of college students are coming in as extras as well. So, it's quite an array of things we're able to offer.
Is it helping build that diversity in the industry? Because there was some research the government recently did about, I'm going to read it because I don't get it wrong, because I think you're quoted in it, so you will get it right. New research showed that over half 11 to 18-year-olds do not know what qualifications are needed for creative jobs, and yet 1 in 3 are interested in creative jobs. Equally, that lots of people don't even know what the creative jobs are to start with. And that must be a huge deal for people like you to try and get these out there to diverse people.
It is, but I think there's a massive job to be done, and I think it is a much misunderstood sector, because I think it's hard enough for many people in the sector to navigate. So if you are guiding your child or young person and you know nothing about the sector, you are going to be cautious about it. I do understand that. But
because
I think
it's not like you're signing a 10-year contract, is it?
Exactly. But I think what we need to get better at talking about is a lot of the unseen roles. Like our production accountant and accountants, a team of accountants, are one of the most important jobs in the building. Do you know what I mean? Or the electricians and sparks, or the craftsmanship and set building that goes on. And I think there's huge numbers of jobs behind the scenes that are very appealing jobs that we could do better to talk about. But yeah, when everyone talks about TV or filmmaking, everyone talks about a director and producer and possibly a writer, but not much beyond that.
And there was a massive, I don't know if it's still the case, there was a massive shortage of production accountants, wasn't there?
Yeah. Production accountants, production coordinators, location managers, notoriously hard to find. And that's a real skilled kind of profession, do you know what I mean? That you can be a real expert in your region and understand the amazing locations that people could shoot in. And so there are some amazing jobs out there that aren't spoken about.
So you've got this new place at Trafford. What happens next for you? What will that change things as a result of this?
So I think for me, I'm really keen that Waterloo Road becomes an established fixture, because there's no reason why it shouldn't, as
like
you
a
say.
Coronation Street.
Exactly. I mean, it's performing incredibly well in the ratings. We're now in productions with season 8 and 9 since the reboot, so that's 70 hours.
So that's season 8 and 9 since the reboot,
yes,
on
so
top of the
season
previous.
18 and 19, as they're called, because the first season of the reboot was season 11. So that's 70 hours of commissioned programming. So my kind of ambition is that we can keep that as a regular drumbeat for BBC iPlayer, but also as a production here in the Northwest. But alongside that, start to evolve other productions, other projects, so you can grow a kind of portfolio of programs that kind of help kind of keep restoring that creative community in the Northwest, really.
Because that's key, and I know there's lots of discussion about the creative industries coming together and doing lots of things, but having central focal points like yours, I imagine, is part of those big old discussions with Manchester Film Office and the council and so on.
Definitely, but also working collegiately with other indies, and that might be other scripted labels like Key Street, or it might be in partnership with some of the fact and indies in the region. And I think that kind of, back to that Granada philosophy of being a bit joined up, I think is an exciting way of working, because in that building in Granada you could have been working on something like Coronation Street, but down the corridor Stars in the Eyes was happening, or the news, do you know what I mean? And so there was more connections happening, really. So yeah, we can encourage more of that, really.
So we're coming to an end here, but can you give us something? What's next for you? Because you've got so much stuff on your plate at the moment, I imagine. Are you so focused on this? Is there anything that you're kind of pushing next?
Yeah, so we've got some active projects in development, but like any development, it's pointless to talk about until they're commissioned. But also, Waterloo Road has to be the best it possibly can be. So it's such an important part of my kind of weekly routine in terms of ensuring that's the best it can possibly be. So I don't take it for granted at all.
I have to ask, did you like school?
You see, I think part of my relationship with school is why I think Waterloo Road is such an important drama, because I actually failed the 12 plus. And so ended up at quite a complex, comprehensive school. And I saw a lot of people who had huge potential just passed by. And I think that observation, aged 12, 13, 14, is really still what I kind of feel is it's the political message of Waterloo Road, really. And so I think I didn't love school, but I didn't have an awful time. And I did make some great friends. So I don't think anyone loves school, do they?
Well, most people haven't made it their career.
That's true.
Unless they're teaching.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, thank you ever so much for coming on. I can't wait to
all.
see how the studios develop and what comes next. Yeah. But it sounds like very exciting times.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching This is MediaCity, which is a 39 Pictures production on behalf of MediaCity and in partnership with the University of Salford, and all the team behind the camera are graduates and undergraduates from the university. So please remember to like, subscribe, comment and share, and we shall see you next week. The production team are Meg Bond, Tegan Easton, Akila Hewitt and James Young.